vehicle had a problem, and that problem I fixed it. Let me take you through on how I fixed that problem. I took the pictures so that I can show you how the problem looked like. I could only take the pictures and not the videos because my phone does not have a good camera for the videos, and at the moment I do not have the money to buy another camera. This vehicle is a Toyota Hilux, and the engine code is 1TR. So the problem description on this vehicle was that after the other mechanics finished rebuilding the engine, then they started the engine. The engine started quite okay, but then suddenly they realized that the RPM gauge just stayed at 2000 while the vehicle was idling. So obviously we know that when you start the vehicle, the vehicle RPM at that moment it's gonna start a little bit higher, but then eventually it's supposed to start dropping down to its normal idling RPM. But in this case, this vehicle, the idling was just right there at 2000. It did not even drop down. And so the other symptom was that even when you press the accelerator pedal all the way to the bottom, so instead of seeing the gauge for the RPM going up all the way to the maximum, but then it will just slightly increase from 2000 RPM to 2500 RPM, and it will just stay there. But the accelerator pedal is all the way to the bottom. So that's one of the symptoms which was there, and it's not supposed to be like that, because you know that after the car has idled for some seconds, it's supposed to drop down to its normal RPM, of which some of the cars it might be somewhere around 750 RPM. So so how did I do the fault finding? Of course, the first thing that I did was that I scanned the vehicle computer box with the diagnostic scanner, and I retrieved some trouble codes. One of the trouble codes was the P0121, which is throttle pedal position sensor / switch A circuit range / performance problem. Then the other trouble code was P2118, which is throttle actuator control motor current range / performance. So then upon seeing these trouble codes, then what I did next was I then disconnected the throttle body and started the vehicle. As the vehicle started, the idling was still at the same 2000 RPM without changing. So then I said, okay, what next should I do? Then I said, okay, let me check the fuse for the ETC, which is the electronic throttle control on the fuse box in the engine bay. Then the fuse was just okay, and I measured there. I could see the 12 volts. The 12 volts was there on the fuse. And then I said, okay, let me check the wiring diagram for this vehicle. So I put out the wiring diagram for this vehicle to check how the ETC, or rather the electronic throttle control, is wired. According to the wiring diagram for this vehicle, the ECT, the electronic throttle control fuse, it supplies 12 volts to the computer box. The computer box is basically the engine control module. So the ETC fuse supplies the 12 volts to the ECU, which is the computer box, through a red with white stripe wire. So there is this red with the white stripe wire that is coming from the ETC fuse going to the ECU, or the computer box. So I located this red and white stripe wire on the computer box, or the ECU connector, So when I located it, then I tested to see if I could see 12 volts on that wire, but then I could not see any 12 volts. And of course, the wiring diagram uh, mentions that it's supposed to have the 12 volts, and from that moment I knew that was the problem. So then I started tracing this red and white stripe wire of the ETC fuse. Yeah, so I started tracing it from the fuse box within the engine bay, just by doing continuity testing to find if I can find a section that will not be continuous. So basically what I was doing is that, okay, I located this wire. So what I'm gonna do is that I'm gonna randomly test along this wire to see maybe somewhere along the way the wire is broken. So of course I know that that wire comes from the fuse box, and the fuse box is in the engine bay, and then it will go uh, just right along the side of the engine bay, and then it will go through the firewall and eventually goes to the ECU, which is the computer box. So I said, okay, let me test within this section from the point where this wire enters the firewall to the fuse box. So let me just see that from this point where it enters the firewall and to the point of the fuse box. So this wire, let me start tracing it. So what I did is I started so yeah, and then I started testing the continuity of this wire from the point where it leaves the fuse box to the point where it enters the firewall. And as I did the continuity testing, then I could not get continuity, and that was an indication that somewhere along the the line of this wire, somewhere this wire it's broken. Yeah, so then the next stage was, where is that point where the wire is broken? So then I had to start exposing the wiring harness just bit by bit, randomly moving from one place to the other. So I started first from the area near to the fuse box, then I start going bit by bit so that I should eventually get to the point where this wire is entering the firewall. So just along there, then I eventually found where that wire was broken. So I removed the insulation around the wiring harness, and I exposed the place which was broken, and I found that wire exactly on which point it was broken, and because of that, and that is what was causing that wire not to supply the 12 volts to the computer box. So the 12 volts from the fuse box could not reach the computer box which is the ECU, because that wire which is supplying that 12 volts to the ECU was broken along the way. As you can see on these pictures, that somewhere here that wire was broken right inside the wiring harness. So when I exposed, I removed the insulation material around the wiring harness, and I located where exactly where that wire was broken. So from all this, then we know that, yeah, because of that wire that was broken, so there was no 12 volts going to the throttle body, and because of that, then the throttle body could not respond even when you press the accelerator, because there was no power going to it, and the vehicle could just be idling at 2000 rpm. It just stayed there without dropping down or any other changes, because the throttle body itself did not have the power for the throttle motor to respond. Because of that, in this book that I have written, there are hundreds car problems and how quickly I had fixed those car problems. Buy this book to support me. The link is in the description, and I thank you so much.